then we had the Constitution, which was ratified in 1791.
So what your organization, what your group has done here is to reoccupy the Congress that was left vacant in 1871?
1860.
1860.
Correct.
Okay.
It really hasn't been active since 1860.
All right. So now, in putting this together, did you hold elections? How was it decided who would be in what position, and what kind of a structure do you have at this point?
Beautiful question. Okay. Because that gets to the most important thing about this whole thing, in my opinion, and that is the reestablishment of our grand juries at the local level. Based on common law or higher law or natural law, whatever you want to call it, we have the right, and the Fifth Amendment gives us this right to have common law grand juries. This is the people's courts. This goes all the way back to, probably almost 1,500 years ago, when Roman law was no longer effective because Rome had dissolved. The beginning of common law and the building up of it, and the Magna Carta and all this stuff.
Yeah, you go back to Cicero in Rome.
Pardon me?
You're going back to Cicero in ancient Rome.
Yeah, it's basically higher law. Cicero is great. The founders were very impressed with Cicero, whose thinking was very similar to John Locke and Francis Hutcheson and the other Enlightenment thinkers as well. They were all about understanding natural law.
Yeah, I think a lot of the writings of Cicero, and he looked back into ancient Greece, into Solon and the ancient Greeks.
Solon,
a lot of his writings kind of sat dormant until the Enlightenment, until people like John Locke and Blackstone started to get to read into this and say, wait a second, there's something here, and then they took it and they brought that to the next level, and they really set the plate for guys like Jefferson and Madison and Mason.
Well, John Locke was a huge influence. He was by far the biggest influence on our founders of any other philosopher. And his second treatise on government was an instrument as instrumental as Common Sense by Thomas Paine was on the colonists at that time. There's basically, from my research, there's three things that the founders, or the colonists, the people, had read, and that was Jonathan Mayhew's pastor speech in 1750, the second treatise on government by John Locke, and then Common Sense by Thomas Paine.
Well, one of the things that are the founding fathers at that time in the 1700s, they were from a variety of backgrounds, educational backgrounds, social backgrounds. Some were rich, some were poor, some were homeschooled, self-educated. Others went to the prestigious schools of the day. But there were a few things that they all had in common, and one of those things was the Bible. One of the things that they all read. They all had a copy of the Bible. They all read it and they understood it. The laws of Moses and whatnot. Yeah, John.
And wasn't Blackstone's commentaries on law, the second most distributed book in the colonies?
Yes, I believe it was. And again,
that was definitely up there. Yep.
So now getting back to the structure of this government. So now that you have an entity that is reoccupying what was left vacant, you're picking up the pieces where they were left off.
Correct.
What's the shape of your group at this point?
So, and you were asking about how we were elected and all that, and so that goes with the grand juries are elected first, and you get, really it's bottom up here, okay? So the first four or five grand jurists in a grand jury are pretty much electing themselves.
Okay.
And then they elect other grand jurors. They get the grand juries occupied, and then the grand juries sit and meet in the counties, and they then elect other officials. And so the grand jurors are meeting at the state level from the different communities. They come to the to assemblies of grand jurists, and then they, like when I got elected to Congress here in Florida, I'm a congressman. We're all pro tem, by the way, which means we're all temporary. We know that. We're just operating, we're just re-inhabiting all the positions of the original republic until such time that we get big enough and there's enough people to have regular elections. So that's what I did. I went to a meeting with about 60 people. There were probably 30 or 40 of the people there were jurors who had been sworn in and an oath taken to be part of the grand jury. They heard me and two other people who were running for an open seat in the Congress. We all spoke, and then they voted, and I got voted in. So that is how we're doing. I mean, we're very careful, too. Everything's documented. Everybody has oaths. All of our signatures are, everything that we sign, oath of office and everything is all fingerprinted and everything, and everything is taken care of because, we really expect to eventually here and hopefully very soon be starting to take over functions that when our de facto government, this corporate government, collapses, and it is about ready to collapse. There's a really good book out called Aftershock. You guys have probably heard of it, where he talks about the four bubbles that have to burst. Two of them are already burst. Real estate and stock market bubbles have burst. We know that, but the dollar bubble has not burst yet, and when it bursts, it's going to be huge, and then the government debt bubble has not burst yet. And the reason they haven't burst is because they're finding new and creative ways every single hour to keep printing money, even though nobody's buying our debt anymore. And
so, how many of these, Clyde? Sorry to interrupt, but how many of these offices are occupied in your de jure government? How many of the congressional seats?
I can only speak for Iowa and Florida because I live in both places, and so I have a pretty good feeling. And I would say in those two states, there's only a couple openings. I mean, I think all the legislature positions are filled in both states. The governor position is filled in both states. The grand juries now, of course, have to be done locally, and that's the focus in Iowa and Florida and everywhere else in the country, is to get the grand juries established in every county in the state. And that we hope to have done within 6 months. And that is moving very quickly, and that's why I'm doing this speaking tour around the country, and I've done about 9 presentations now, and is to bring people into the Republic, introduce it to them, and get them signed up, and get them to be active as jurors in their local county.
And Clyde, you're moving around the country. You're doing these presentations. Are you funding this out of your own pocket? Where do you get your funding to go around and do these presentations?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I've been successful in business. I have a very successful company that only takes me about 2 or 3 hours a day to run these days. Well, I better be careful saying that. My partner might be listening to this show. But I managed to find time to spend a lot of time on the Republic, and I have enough money and income coming in from that. My partner is actually very understanding. He knows that this is a passion of mine and that I have to do it, and and he supports it 100%. So I'm very fortunate. I pay for everything. I pay all my own expenses, and I supply a free copy of Common Sense Revisited to everybody that comes to the meetings.
So at this point, you have basically appointed someone to be a governor. Particularly, we'll look at the state of Florida. Who is that? No,
the governor was elected. There was just an election here last week on the state of Florida, and Michael Bishop, who was our ambassador. Every state also has an ambassador, and the ambassador's job is to bring people into the Republic. And Michael was the ambassador. He ran against, I think at least, I wasn't at that meeting, I was up in Iowa, but I think he ran against at least one, if not 2 other people, and Michael won the election.
I didn't hear anything about it on Fox or CNN.